So this is going to be, okay, this is being recorded. So this is going to be a brief introduction to spiritual maternity, because actually it's a topic that is very dear to my heart. And I have over the years done much reading, much research and study about it. So there is so much for us to know about this, this call of God to each of us as women. But today, I hope I will be able to transmit at least a brief introduction to just give you a taste for it, so that you can desire for more and do your own reading perhaps and your own research about this. So until very recently, the vocation to be a spiritual mother has been largely unknown and very scarcely understood. And consequently, it has been rarely lived, even though it is of fundamental importance. It is a vocation that is frequently hidden and invisible to the naked eye, but it is meant to transmit spiritual life. Now, every now and then, I'm going to be stopping what I'm going to be sharing and just giving you some time to reflect. And then one or two of you maybe will be asked to give just a bit of feedback of what your takeaway is. What are some of those words maybe that have impacted you and that you would like to share and you would like to take home with you? So I'll just start with a very, very easy question. Don't worry, it will not be very difficult, my questions. So what comes to mind? What image, what word, what sentiment comes to mind when you hear the word mother? And those of you who wish, they can also share in the chat so that we can read them out to the others. What comes to mind when you hear the word mother? Maybe it's an image, maybe it's a sentiment, maybe it's a memory. So humility. Alice is writing humility. Any more? Love, nurturer.
Care.
You can also, yes, unmute and say something. Care. Very good, very good. You're all brilliant, very good. That's right. A mother is, yes, is one who loves sacrificially, who is caring, who nurtures. Definitely, definitely. Okay, teacher. Excellent. Teacher, she's a teacher, a protector and a guide. Yes, already with those words, with those profiles, we already have a brief profile of what a woman is. She's a nurturer, she's a teacher, she's one who cares, who loves even sacrificially. Now, I'm sure many of you here are biological mothers. They are physical mothers who have given birth to beautiful children. And the good news is that whether we are married with children or without, whether we are single or consecrated, by virtue of being created feminine, the genius behind God's design for you, body and soul, inherently equips you to motherhood. Isn't that good news? So we can say, and here I need to share screen. Okay, let's do this. Yes. Okay, it's coming. Here we are. Yes. So we can safely say that all women have the gift of maternity. And it is expressed in two ways: physical maternity and spiritual maternity. Now, the obvious association with maternity is that of pregnancy, childbirth, and a little baby and a cute little cot, and then raising these children to become adults. But a new, broader perspective of motherhood was given to us by Saint John Paul II in his apostolic letter, Mulieris Dignitatem, that speaks on the vocation and dignity of women. This is where he states that the moral and spiritual strength of a woman is joined to her awareness that God entrusts the human being to her in a special way. And this entrusting concerns women in a special way, precisely because of the reason of their femininity. So this, in a particular way, determines their vocation. God entrusts the human being to you, to me, in a special way. And he does so precisely because we are women. This entrusting of God, of the human person to you and to me, determines our very vocation. Now, in this section, John Paul is describing the universal vocation of all women, and not just the vocation of women who bear children. God entrusts all women by reason of their femininity, their design, the intrinsic identity to be actively involved in caring for the human being. Moreover, it is our very vocation. And this is why it is so crucial that we hold gatherings like this as women to understand what this call holds for you. And I'm hoping to be able to share some of that intrinsic worth, this intrinsic value, this intrinsic understanding of what it means for us to be spiritual mothers. In the recent years, there has been a greater recognition in the church of the vocation of spiritual motherhood. It is a topic, in fact, that is very much included in many of the women's conferences, in women's retreats, and this is an example. And it's across, it's done in different countries. Moreover, small groups of women are gathering nowadays so that they can teach, so that they can also learn, so that they can also study what it means to be a spiritual mother, so that they can better implement its practices. But spiritual motherhood is not simply a recent fad in the Catholic Church. There is, in fact, a very strong tradition of spiritual motherhood dating back to the early church. And by this, I am referring to the desert mothers who went to live in a solitary way, and some of them even communally, in the deserts of Egypt and the Holy Land in the 4th and the 5th century. And they wanted to do so that they can fully live, so that they can seek to live out the great commandment of loving God and loving neighbor. Now, historians tell us that actually in the desert, there were about twice as much desert mothers as there were desert fathers, even though what was handed down to us is more related to the writings of the spiritual fathers. However, we know enough to know that these spiritual mothers were sought out for guidance in living the Christian life. And it was not simply guidance by, normal people wanted to live out the fullness of the Christian life. For example, it is documented that Amma, as they were called, Amma stands for mother, that Amma Theodora was actually a spiritual director to many bishops and many renowned, famous men in civil life, in society. So there's much wisdom to glean from these desert mothers, but for now, it suffices to say that, yes, these mothers have much to pass on to us. And just like these Ammas, just like these desert mothers, spiritual maternity has been lived across the centuries in ways that enriched the quality of life, that enriched the spiritual life of the church to the point of making it flourish. Let's take, for example, women saints. In women saints, spiritual motherhood abounds. And here I just listed a few that you probably are already familiar with. And I have divided them into 3 sections because there were saints who were spiritual mothers, who were married and gave birth to children, those who were religious sisters, and those who were single lay women. And of course, I took it back from Saint Anne, the grandmother of Jesus and mother of Mary, Saint Monica, Saint Francis of Rome, and up to modern day Saint Gianna Molla. And the picture here, the photograph here is of Saint Gianna Molla, who was both a doctor and a pediatric specialist, actually. If you haven't read the life of Saint Gianna Molla, I really encourage you to do so. She's a fascinating woman, contemporary saint. And then, of course, there's Saint Clare of Assisi, Saint Teresa of Avila, Teresa of Lisieux, and Teresa Benedict of the Cross. Probably you're more familiar with the name Edith Stein, and that's a picture of her there. And of course, there's the picture of the servant of God, Dorothy Day, but also lay women, single women who followed the Lord and gave spiritual birth, where, you know, in the Bible, we have Mary Magdalene, and then there's Joan of Arc, Saint Rose of Lima. So these women saints speak about spiritual motherhood in a very, very specific way. Let's say, for example, let's share, for example, what Saint Teresa of Lisieux had to say. This holy woman was deeply in love with Jesus, as all holy women are. She loved him like a bride loves his beloved. And in her heart, this espousal love of Jesus is the very source of her spiritual motherhood. Therefore, this espousal love for Jesus, of Jesus, gave birth, gave the fruit of spiritual souls. Paradoxically, as we study the life of Teresa of Lisieux and her spiritual motherhood, this personal and exclusive intimacy she shared with Jesus is what dilated her heart to embrace all within this vocation of maternal love. As a woman, this intrinsic dynamism of espousal love resulted in maternal love and defined the very vocation and mission of Therese. This is why she says, to be your spouse, and by my union with you, to be mother of souls. So this, she discovered, was her very vocation and her very mission in the cloister. So she was someone who never actually left the cloister. She never left the monastery. So she is one who shows us that virgins who are consecrated, who are united with Christ, are rendered fruitful by giving spiritual birth to several souls on earth. And it is not only the cloistered nuns, but singles, consecrated virgins who are not in cloistered monasteries, who are also among you here and in our different communities. They too are rendered fruitful through their love to Jesus. And she also expressed this in a very beautiful way, Therese, in one of her poems called Jesus, My Beloved, when she said, I am a virgin, O Jesus, but what mystery! Uniting myself with you, I am mother of souls. Now, this theme of mother of souls is a recurring theme in the lives of many of the women saints. For example, we have in Saint Catherine of Siena, this mother of souls is expressed in the words, giving birth to souls. You labor to give birth to souls. You labor in prayer, you labor in service, you labor in accompaniment to give birth to spiritual souls. But also Saint Teresa Benedict of the Cross, or Edith Stein, says it is very similar to striving to win human beings for God, to carry him into souls, to beget and secure children for him, to secure his children safely in his love. So this, again, element of bearing spiritual children is not only for the cloistered nuns, is not only for the great saints. We need to be reminded that St. John Paul II said, this is the universal vocation for us as women. I have already filled you in with so much information. So let's just pause for a while and try to recall what we have just heard. And maybe one or two of you can switch off their microphone and let us know what is your takeaway, what struck you, what you would like to remember after this sharing. We'll just have a minute of reflection.
Can I speak?
Yes, you can, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. As you have been speaking about saving souls, I'm reminded of a prayer I had been saying as a child for aborted children. And I had been praying it for a very long time. At that time, I did not even understand the meaning or the implication of it. But I don't know. I feel like I've been spiritual mother to so many children. I don't even know them, but I have prayed for these aborted children, and I feel I have so many children. I feel like a spiritual mother to so many children whom I prayed for unknowingly, just out of charity or what. I don't know. I did not really intentionally want to become a spiritual mother, but I just became one.
That is so precious. Thank you for sharing that testimony. And I'm so blessed to learn that this has been, in a sense, a revelation for you, that all these years, without knowing, because of your love for Jesus, the Lord allowed you to become a mother of souls, a spiritual mother. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to share something? What has struck you so far?
I thought of the women from the Light of Christ community, Auntie Doris, Auntie Yvonne, Kathy, Auntie Beulah, all those who journeyed with me. So they have been spiritual mothers to me.
That is so precious. Thank you. Thank you. Rightly so.
I would like to also share.
Yes.
Anna, you are a spiritual mother for the entire ICP mission. You are to this community, national community, and you are the mother of all of us, spiritual.
It is my humble privilege. Thank you. Thank you for God's work in my life. It is all His glory. And truly, it is my joy and privilege to labor and to love you. Yes. And to give my life that you will love Jesus and that you will experience His love. These testimonies are important because they bring these words into our lives. They make them concrete. This is a call that is being concretized in our life in one way or another. So we'll have more time to share as we go along. So I'm just going to continue on with some more sharing, and we'll stop in a moment or two. So, okay, this is, okay, so we might be wondering at the same time, how does this all work? How do we actually give birth children? To what Pope John Paul II has already reminded us, that it is by virtue of who we are as women, body and soul, that we are actually able to bear spiritual children. But we also need to go back to remember another important factor, or maybe to remember a very important person who makes possible our spiritual maternity. And this, of course, is Mary, the mother of Jesus and the mother of God. Before we do that, we need to go back to Eve. We need to go to Eve and remember that in Genesis chapter 3, she was called the mother of all the living. That means she was the mother in the natural order. She gave birth to humankind. Whereas in the church fathers, the early church wise men and women of God, because there are church mothers as well, in the early church, Mary was also being referred to as the new Eve. Why? Because she was the one who became a mother in the supernatural order. That means because of her yes, she opened for us the possibility for grace, for the unmerited love of God, to be able to have a Redeemer, so that we can again enter into communion with God. So this is why the church speaks of Mary as the mother in the order of grace. Because with Eve's no, sin was brought into being. The separation of God came into being. But through Mary's yes, the redemption of our lives was brought to the world. Mary's yes brought forth the Redeemer to the world and the possibility for us to be in communion with God. So yes, in a very unique way, Mary cooperated in the work of our Savior, in restoring grace, restoring supernatural life to us. And this is why, through our participation in Mary's spiritual maternity, as spiritual mothers, we can bear children in the order of grace, in the supernatural order, in other words. Isn't that precious? Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a wonderful, wonderful privilege that we united, incorporated into Mary's supernatural motherhood, can give birth to souls in the order of grace, in the supernatural realm. Let's go on and hear a little bit more about what saints have to say in terms of spiritual motherhood. And I would just like to refer to Edith Stein, or Benedicta of the Cross. She says, everywhere the need exists for maternal sympathy and help. And thus we are able to recapitulate in the one word motherliness, that which we have developed as the characteristic value of woman. So she's saying everywhere there is a great need for maternal sympathy and help. And in this one word, motherliness, maternal sympathy and help, one word, motherliness, is the characteristic value of woman. She goes on to say, only the motherliness must be that which does not remain within the narrow circle of blood relations or of personal friends, but in accordance with the model of the Mother of Mercy, it must have its root in universal divine love for all who are there, belabored and burdened. How clearly it is stated for us. Yes, this motherliness, this maternal sympathy and help, and everywhere there is a need of that in the world, and not only in the times of Edith Stein, but today, probably more than ever, this motherliness is not confined to those in our family. This motherliness is not confined to our friends. It needs to be in the model of Mary, Mother of Mercy. It needs to be, therefore, a universal motherhood, stemming, rooted in the universal divine love for all. The universal divine love for all. So imaging that love of God that Mary took upon her when she gave Jesus for each and every one of us, a universal kind of love. So maternal love, spiritual maternity, is a universal type of love, a universal kind of love. Another way of learning more about spiritual motherhood is has to do with something that one of you already referred to, asking ourselves, who has been a spiritual mother to me? And I would like you to take this question home with you. So if you have a scrap of paper, just jot it down so that you will take it into prayer one of these days in the coming week. So who has been a spiritual mother to you? Think about it a little bit. And as you do, I would just like to mention a couple of examples from my own life. Of course, it's not limited to just these two women. I have had a beautiful handful of spiritual mothers, but I'd just like to refer you to Miss Lena Camilleri, for example. She was my head mistress during my secondary school years. And as the head girl of the school at that time, I was very much involved in going to her office for one reason or another. But at one point, she was giving me the feeling that she's up to something, especially every time she put her hand on my shoulder and started murmuring some words. Of course, later I found out that she was actually laying her hand upon my shoulder and praying for me. So because she had just had a very important encounter with the Lord, she had just found a new faith, she had just found a new relationship with Jesus. She wanted to impart this to her students as well. So she organized the Life in the Spirit seminars during the lunch break. And of course, I was pulled in as the head girl. And before I knew it, I was going through the Life in the Spirit seminars. And I cannot thank God enough for this headmistress who became one of the most important spiritual mothers in my life. Because as a 14-year-old, through these Life in the Spirit seminars, my encounter with Jesus happened. I simply fell in love with Jesus. I simply fell in love and became so grateful for what Jesus did on the cross. Somehow it became clear to me what Jesus had done on the cross for me, what salvation means, even as a 14-year-old. And for the rest of my life, I wanted to follow Jesus and give my life for his glory. So this is it. This headmistress went beyond her call of duty. She wasn't only concerned about the academic progress of her students. She transcended her role as an educator and became a true spiritual mother to many of her students. And then there was another woman later on in my life, as I was preparing for marriage. Her name is Mari, and she continues to be one of my best friends up until today. She was someone who prepared me for marriage, with Mario, she and her husband, in fact. And Mary was one of those women, young women, whom I could trust to share my hopes for married life, but equally my fears and anxiety about such a big decision in my life. So she would listen lovingly, she would encourage and pray with me, but she would also advise me about how to plan meals that were both economical and also tasty and healthy. Or she would advise me about the best fabric conditioner on the market. So I treasure my relationship with Mari and with my headmistress, as I do with so many other spiritual mothers. They did not replace my own mother's influence in my life, which in my case was enormous. They added to it. They enriched my life in ways that made a lasting impact. God used them to fill me with love, with hope, with faith and encouragement. And thanks to their holy influence, I am a better woman with stronger maternal sensibilities that I too am called to use as a spiritual mother. So already we can start having a profile of a spiritual mother. Let's have just 10 ways we can spot a spiritual mother. So she is one who nurtures others to become who they are meant to be in God's eyes. She is the one who has a bigger vision of the person she is caring for. She's the one who accompanies others to become the best version of themselves. She's the one who recognizes, affirms, and protects human dignity in all its stages and in all its forms. She performs spiritual works of mercy and with great maternal care. She sustains, listen to all these verbs, nurtures, sustains, performs spiritual works. She sustains, prays for others. This is definitely an intrinsic work of the mother, the spiritual mother. She practices the art of friendship and hospitality. She passes on what she knows as a mentor. She is a joy catalyst. She doesn't only speak about the joy of the gospel. She is a joyful disciple of Jesus, so that she attracts others to the gospel. She's a woman of holy influence who helps to give birth to saints. And then, of course, there are all these maternal images of God in the Bible. I highlighted a few here, but I read one in Hosea. Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk, I who took them up in my arms. They did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with bands of love. I was to them like one who lifts an infant to their cheeks, bending down to them. I fed them. So we can go on and on to speak about these very, very essential elements of motherly love, but I have gathered them here for you in just 4 points. So authentic motherly love is one that stoops down towards those who are weak, small, and poor to help them grow. Authentic motherly love is the most tender, merciful, patient, and gentle type of love. It is an unconditional love. It makes possible loving our neighbor unconditionally despite the weaknesses and faults. And of course, it is a gratuitous love because it is a sacrificial and selfless type of love. I would just like to leave you with another question. How will I respond to the call to be a spiritual mother today? Take this home with you and ponder a little bit about it. And yeah, it is a call to each and every one of us as women by virtue of being women. And I would also just like to conclude by saying that as I was praying for you this morning and for this meeting, I was praying boldly because spiritual mothers pray with boldness. They have a robust faith because they believe in an almighty God. So I was praying that through this little sharing, this very simple sharing, a spiritual movement of spiritual mothers in India would come about. That out of your response to this question, the Lord will raise up an army of spiritual mothers who are intentionally choosing spiritual motherhood as their vocation. Now, in many ways, the Catholic Church in India is thriving and it's undergoing an impressive growth, despite the fact that it's still less than 2% of the population. And also despite the challenges it has, the Hinduism, Hindu radicalism, the theology of religious plurality, the caste system. Yet by 2050, it is predicted that the number of Catholics in India will rise to roughly 30 million. No doubt, the Indian Church is positioned to become an important player in Catholic affairs worldwide. So perhaps there was never a better opportunity for a trumpet call to sound. I'm reading because I wrote it out during prayer, and I would like to read what I experienced in prayer. for a trumpet call to sound so that courageous women would rise to embrace their vocation to nurture, sustain, carry, and influence this generation like never before to their time, talents, and treasure. Spiritual mothers are needed in every corner of your world, wherever people live, love, work, and think. Wherever there are weak, unhappy, helpless, and unloved persons, but also wherever there is potential and a desire for growth in the lives of individuals or couples or sectors of society, sectors in the church. Engaging as spiritual mothers is an exercise of hope in the future. Our hope, an exercise of our hope for the future of the church, for the future of society, for the future of the world. So taking up the task of spiritual motherhood is also our expression of faith in a God who is the wellspring of life, who is the wellspring of love, the wellspring of joy, of healing, of redemption. It is our expression of our faith in God, who is not up there or out there, but here and now, at the center of all reality, because that is where his beloved ones live, where they love, where they suffer, but also where they aspire for happiness. As we respond to this noble, indispensable call for us as women, we are responding with our limitations, with our weaknesses. So we respond with great humility, but at the same time with the awareness and great confidence that God is able to take our humble lives and do something great for his glory. In Matthew chapter 9, Jesus looks at the crowds with compassion and sees that the harvest is ripe and asks for prayers that there will be more laborers in the harvest field. The harvest is ripe in India, my sisters. How will we respond? How will you respond? I pray that we will respond today to be laborers in God's vineyards with great joy and generosity of heart. Because I promise you that as we do, we will be given the great privilege of witnessing the wonders of God, not only around us, witnessing the wonders of God not only around us, but believe me, witnessing the marvels of God in our own personal lives, so that we can join with Mary to proclaim, indeed, the Almighty has done great things, and holy is his name. I have taken quite some time, but I would just like to leave some more minutes for you to share anything that you're going to take away with you today. Any thought, any word, any experience, any memory. Thank you for your patience in listening. So feel free to open your microphones and share.
Hello?
Hello? Yes, Rachel, we're hearing you.
No, I'm Sally. I'm not Rachel.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have been feeling this calling to pray for souls in a very strong way. And recently, when we celebrated the feast of the little flower Saint Teresa of Lisieux, I was once again, captured by her life.
that was her mission, to save souls. And as you rightly mentioned in your PowerPoint, she became a spiritual mother by saving souls or praying for souls. And before this feast, I was like inspired, and I've been praying the Saint Gertrude prayer, wherein every time you recite the prayer, 1,000 souls are saved in that prayer. That is our belief, and that is what is told. Saint Gertrude had said. So I have been saying that prayer in order to save souls. So I get the satisfaction that, okay, today I've saved 1,000 souls. But at this feast of Saint Teresa on the 1st of October, what struck me more than just saving souls was saving people who have hurt us. It was something that I had been struggling with and praying for deliverance, to be able to forgive those who hurt us. So what struck me during this feast mass that I attended was that she saved the souls of those who hurt her, who caused her pain, who caused her suffering. And now I find it easier to forgive when we I used to pray for enemies, bless those who curse. I did that, but it was not from within. It was just a kind of a ritual prayer. But after attending this mass, I find it easier to, genuinely pray for them. That, because they are suffering people, or they are sinners who are in need of prayer, and they need to be saved. So instead of condemning them or criticizing them or judging them and being unforgiving towards them, I needed to pray for them. So I think that is the mission that maybe I'm so happy that today you brought out this topic of spiritual motherhood. And I presume I'm also called to be that spiritual mother to so many souls who need to be saved. They may not have had the good fortune of being brought up in a good family, or receiving catechism, or the teachings of the faith, or whatever reasons. God has been good to me. So God has been merciful to me. So I need to share that with others who haven't had that good fortune. So this is what is my home.
Wonderful, wonderful testimony. Thank you. Very inspiring.